Welcome everybody to TNM Coaching Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected Podcast. We're so grateful and happy that you are with us today once again. And we're so grateful for all of your shares, for your comments on YouTube, for your comments on Spotify. Just last week, a family member of a very dear executive coaching client of mine came to me personally and told me how much learning the last session was when it comes to creating habits and changing habits and understanding the neurology of the brain. So if you missed that podcast, please go back and listen to that, which is really, really beautiful for you to learn. So thank you so much for being with us. Today, we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. She is my new friend. She is the new in TNM Coaching affiliation. She is very popular and famous around the world because she does a lot of speeches, a lot of seminars, a lot of teaching for the International Coach Federation and around the world. Michelle Chambers. She has been a team coach and faculty member of Team Coaching International for over 12 years, I suppose. She also brings a vast experience from a global team coaching institute as well. And she has an interesting background because she was also leading people. She was in the business. She was working within the same context like so many leaders work with. And she understands the complexity, the challenges, and she empathizes with people and teams. And this is something that really makes her a powerful and strong team coach. And today we're going to talk about this beautiful topic of team coaching, what team coaching is, why do we need team coaching? Michelle and I both have passion for that. And today we're going to try to transfer our passion onto you and then elevate your mind, elevate your heart and your soul into the new learning around team coaching. So Michelle, welcome. Glad to have you on our podcast.
Thank you so much, Zoran. I'm really pleased to be here with you and with all of the audience and looking forward to today's topic. You are right on. We are both very passionate around team coaching.
Exactly. So, our passion is shared. My curiosity about you, just for our audience to get a little bit, what was your journey into the team coaching? We know nowadays that coaching industry is blooming. We have corporate coaching, group coaching, individual coaching, life coaching, executive coaching. We have so many different coaching modalities, and yet we're talking about team coaching. So how did you get into the team coaching? What was your journey into it?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I actually started off as a manager customer service in the banking industry because I had psychology and business degrees. And I really loved that they were progressive in terms of HR, but I didn't love the manager role that I was in. And then an old area manager called me and gave me an opportunity to develop the first national team leader program for the bank in Canada. And I was hooked. I was like, wow, this is just so interesting. How can I help these people? I'm observing them. I'm creating content. And I wasn't even coaching. I was really just developing a leadership program. But I was also very young in my career. So I knew I needed more experience and it was a contract opportunity. So I pursued a master's degree in workplace learning and change. And of course, one of my programs was high performing teams. And so the facilitator of that program was still a mentor and a friend of mine. And that was back in 93. And I loved it. And I'm like, okay, I need to get into more of this work. And shortly thereafter, I had an opportunity to actually design and create a leadership development strategy for a telecom company in Canada. So I was responsible leadership development enterprise-wide. And so that was it. Like we're doing 360s and leadership development and programs. And from there, I'm like, okay, this is fun. This is interesting. This is challenging to me. And there's an intellectual side of me as well as the empathetic side. And then I went to do ORSC coaching. And at that time, a lot of people from ORSC were doing Team Coaching International with Phil Sandel, who wrote the book Coactive Coaching.
Yeah.
I met Phil.
That book
Yeah,
is great.
it's like the base book, right? So I met Phil, and I'm the only person in the room who's not a coach. And I'm kind of feeling nervous. I have this HR background, lots of experience working with teams.
Yeah.
And Phil was just very calming, and it was a fantastic course. I was very, very impressed. But my big aha moment was this. Instead of doing one-offs or retreats, team coaching was just like executive coaching. Let's do a minimum 6-month engagement where we can create sustainable workplace behaviors and change over time. It was like this big aha moment. I'm like, duh, why didn't I think of this sooner? And then so I started to work that way and obviously took Phil's program, became faculty, and just am really passionate around the positive impact that we can create for teams and working with them as systems to create change that they're accountable for.
And I love that, how can we get team to work in the systems to create the change that they're accountable for? In the essence, you're defining team coaching for us. So because they are the system, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's a big shift for people, and especially if they're coming from individual coaching, to realize that the team is your client and the team is a system. And it's not about going around and doing individual interviews with them and trying to pull it together. It's about assessing them as a team, working with them as a team, and giving them the tools and processes so that they can develop as a coach while they're working in the business.
And this carrying out business nowadays, which is very complex. You and I talked a little bit in precursor of this program, like in the leaders nowadays, the teams nowadays, they have a lot to deal with. It's becoming very, very complex, complicated decision making, the digitalization, the speed of everything. And I think that the only way to create anything is to have a powerful team. And I think the team coaching for myself is becoming much more important than ever before. It was always important, but now it's more important. Would you agree to that the team nowadays is the foundation, the essence of the success?
Yeah, I think the team as a system is actually going to be more important for creating change in organizations. You can develop individuals to a certain degree, but that doesn't mean individuals are going to work well together. And a lot of our work is being done in teams. And now with agile teams, a lot of people are coming together. They're forming quickly as a team, just forming, working on different projects, even leadership teams, the complexity they're facing. And I remember studying, Meg Weekly's complexity theory decades ago, but we don't even mention VUCA anymore because everyone's been through that. It is a challenging environment. And so it is just the dynamics in a team. That's just a small element of team coaching. It's the systems within which they work. And that's where I find the most challenge, and what really makes me passionate about it is how can I create a space to enable the team to address their challenges, leverage their strengths, and really make a positive impact in terms of achieving their goals.
So that's a wonderful question that I want to ask you based on what you share right now. So let's say that the company XYZ invites you and says, Michelle, we really need your support. We want this team to be better for any reason. We want them to become more profitable, more productive. We want them to work well together. What is your starting point? What is your starting point to create that space that you said for the team members to be able to work together and accomplish something? Where would you start?
Yeah, I think it's important, first of all, to meet with the leader of the team and to help them really understand what team coaching is. So often a sponsor may call you. And unfortunately, we usually get called when a team's in crisis, right? So it's never, our team's working well. Can you enable them to be even better? Usually there's a crisis. So I think it's really important to meet with the leader to help them understand what team coaching is, what the goals of team coaching are. A lot of them have never been exposed to that before, and it's not team building. So you need to clarify that. And I think we need to build the trust of the leader because they're making themselves a little bit more vulnerable when they're opening up their team. Because in a way, people are questioning their ability to lead the team or to support the team. Exactly. So I want to build that psychological safety and trust with them, share how we can work together, what the goals of team coaching are, the benefits, and that, this is going to be hard work. It's not going to be easy. They're going to need to dedicate time, resources, try new ways of learning and experimenting. And then I often invite the team to come in to ask any questions that they may have. And then once we actually agree to work together, I often use an assessment. I find an assessment is a lot quicker than gathering data with individual interviews. It also prevents me from having any biases towards individuals. So I'm consciously aware of that. Plus, teams own the data. It's very much their data. There's no subjectivity in it. And it's a starting place, to have
what is your favorite assessment that you use?
I use Team Coaching International's assessment quite a bit. But the process for me, I've amalgamated different organizations and different theories of team coaching. So it all comes down to the same, to creating a safe space where the team has psychological safety and trust, where the team has identified the goals that they want to work on, and helping them develop that within their system and across their system. So bringing their stakeholder interests in as well, and engaging them in effective dialogue, educating them with different types of tools, Sometimes it's a little bit of actual practice in the team coaching session, like if they're learning how to give each other effective, positive, and constructive feedback. And typically with senior leadership teams, there's a little bit of consulting at the end. I know ICF doesn't, suggest we do that, but it's also, I think there's that relationship when senior leaders have worked with external consultants. They're hoping to get a little bit of expertise from you, but I reserve that and I shift my hat, and
Yeah.
they're clear about that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I mean, sometimes shifting the hat and saying, now I'm in consultancy role, I'm going to knowledge transfer and help you out. It's always powerful for that. I want to ask you that question that I've been asked so many times, but I'm very curious about your take on it, because I love corporate jargon, but I don't like corporate jargon. In my podcast, I'm always trying to demystify certain things, right? To make them real. So when you talk about psychological safety, a lot of the people nowadays are talking about psychological safety, right? From the D&I perspective, from a team perspective, from many different dimensions, people are mentioning psychological safety, psychological safety. So within the team that you're coaching, what is actually necessary to happen for that team to experience that state that we call psychological safety, so that you can then see as a team coach and say, this is good, there is this bond between them, there is a safety, they can do this. So what is necessary and what is it for you?
Great question. I love that. I actually just introduced the concept of psychological safety very quickly, that it's by Amy Edmondson and that it was created within teams. And that the best and highest performing teams are really able to ask each other challenging questions. They're able to learn and make mistakes. Imagine that, making a mistake. We're human, right? But it's how do we learn from those mistakes? In fact, I actually encourage them to see mistakes as failures, and fail stands for first attempt in learning. So everyone gets a little chuckle out of that. And it's about that ability to question each other in a way that is a productive way of conflict, so that they can have that space to really understand each other's perspectives. And that actually leads to greater creativity and innovation. And as you know, as team coaches, sometimes it takes a little while to establish that psychological safety and trust. And one of the things I like about TCI's assessment is trust is one of the factors that they measure. So you have an idea right from the beginning whether a team is really low on trust or very high. And it's really about getting them to build the relationships, get to know one another. And a lot of times we don't do that in the workplace. And so we have to build that into our team coaching and teach them ways that they can do that with their team. So especially now in the world of hybrid, we have to make intentional choices about just doing check-ins, for example, at the beginning of meetings. It's been a well-known process used in meetings, face-to-face, but a lot of people didn't necessarily adapt that for hybrid. And it's all about building trust. It's about relationship. So when I start to see the shifts in the team, that's when I see that it's like they let their walls or their guard down. And now they're challenging each other in a positive way. They're giving feedback to one another. They're now saying, okay, this wasn't my intent, but this didn't work out the way I expected. How can you guys help me? How do we help one another bring this back? And they're building in reflection times for learning so that they can capitalize on that and ideally teach their own teams some of the methods they've learned and the mistakes they've learned from, and then build that into their own processes long term.
I love what you're sharing, because for me, that's the essence. And if that happens, really, then we can do a powerful work. They can do a powerful work, but you're saying, the time for reflection, the time for learning, being able to challenge one another, the element of trust is so important. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, which is, again, for some challenging question, maybe for you it's not, they always say that the leader is the one that sets the emotional tone. The leader, the team leader, somebody like, let's say, executive team, the CEO, it's the one who really determines how the team is going to function. Is that true? Because a lot of the times people will say, no, that's not true. Forget about that. We are ecosystem. We are matrix organization. We're collaborative. We don't buy into that hierarchical point of view. But from my experience, it's still not clear. So from your experience in taking a team, is that correct? Is it still happening? Do we really need to work with the
Interesting. Yeah, it's only 9:00 in the morning here in Canada. That's a tough question first thing, right?
I know. I can share what I feel as well.
Love it. I think it's a really valid question. And I think part of that comes down to the culture of the organization and the level of the team that you're working with. So, for example, in cultures that aren't hierarchical, that they are more self-managing, perhaps it may be true that the team is truly working as a system where each member is an equal part of the system and all voices are heard. I find when I'm working with senior leadership teams, I still think the CEO has a role to play and they do convey the emotion and they set up. So that's why that meeting with the CEO or the leader of the team is so important, because we help prep them for how to introduce team coaching. And I share with them that their role is to be a full and participating member of the team. Because a lot of times they'll say, I'm just going to sit back and watch my team. I don't want to, interfere with them.
Yeah, exactly. Or I don't want to interfere with you. I'm just observing. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no, I said, if you feel that way, then be the last person to speak. But we definitely want you to have a voice in the team. And the team needs to see that you are a full and participating member. In fact, I won't work with them unless it's kind of a contract part of my process right up front. And then I think the other thing is that I prep them on introducing team coaching the first day we get together so that we can talk about, what that looks like. Now, I also do a little bit of a check-in with my leader of the team prior to each coaching session. And I call this it's my pulse check. I just want to get an idea from them, anything happening in the culture, anything that they want to talk about, any support that they need to help the team. And in that capacity, I think we develop that relationship, answer any questions or concerns that develop as the process unfolds. And then I also do a little bit of a check-in after the actual team coaching engagement and, of course, after each session. And it's a chance for them just to, raise concerns, share ideas, just collect. And I'm transparent about that process. Everyone on the team knows that happens, and that's part of it. So, but I do think they flavor, if they're engaged about it, they're happy about it, it's great. I had a person who was a director in an organization and she was a social work background. I'll tell you, she understood exactly what team coaching was, what we wanted to do. She was very positive about it. And this was a team that was so significantly challenged. They'd done every intervention. They were actually going to be dispersed in the organization, a communications leadership team, which obviously you always want to retain that in-house, right?
Of course.
But they were so dysfunctional that people were going out and subcontracting their communications. So like I said, we get called in when things are really challenging. They're not achieving their goals. But because she understood it, I do think it influenced the emotions of everyone else because she was positive about the process, the outcomes, what we could do together. And she was really supportive of her team and of me too, as the coach bringing me in. And as a result, that team worked very hard and they had performance improvement of up to 68% over 9 months in some of their team performance indicators. And now that was really incredulous. We don't have that with every single team. They were also at a very low positivity, low productivity. They were in crisis mode. More importantly, they achieved their transformational objectives, became a really fantastic communications team, partnered with all of their stakeholders and developed better processes in the organization. And now they fully support the organization.
Beautiful. And I know this was a difficult question. I agree with you, by the way. I have the same experience like yourself. I think it's very important that leader does buy into everything and they align to the initiatives and they are in full support and they show up. So instead of this exercise just beginning, this is my team, fix it. I am a team member and I am part of this and I'm vulnerable enough. You mentioned that keyword of vulnerability. When you need to expose yourself as a team leader, as a CEO who leads executive team, to be vulnerable enough to ask for support. And I always have this conversation with the human resources, leadership development teams, also the team members. There's nothing wrong about that. We are always in need of support. Powerful teams, football team, soccer team, basketball team, volleyball team, they all have team coaches. The reason is that they need to be going to different stages of vulnerability to be able to reach big performance. So we all require support.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if every organizational team had a coach like professional sports teams do?
Amazing. It would be literally amazing. I think that they will then excel exactly as that team that you have described for us right now, to went 65% from being dysfunctional to being fully functional. Now, Michelle, let's move into this. A lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are senior leaders, they're HR executives, they're team leaders. So if they're listening to this and they're wondering, okay, so how do I know that my team is not functioning well? How do I know that I need to hire a team coach? What are some of the challenges the teams are facing nowadays that will signify as a red flags and saying, now you need support, you need to step into it? What would you say to that question? How do you recognize that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different sources of information that can be recognized internally. So for example, if it's a project team and there might be a project manager, they're probably noticing the dynamics in a team not working well together. So maybe they're not communicating well, decisions aren't being done well, there's conflict that's not being managed well. Those are some of the 3 top issues we see in every single team. Mm-hmm. They'll often be a source and highlight that for the team or put their request forward. Often the leader of the team will see, you know what, we're not moving forward as my team really buying in to the vision that I've created. And they may think they've communicated it lots of times, and they may have, but if the team hasn't truly understood it or they're not committed to it, there's lots of different ways that they'll see it. Wow, we're just progressing really slow, or people don't seem engaged. They're not contributing even as individual contributors. And that's challenging. I think I've also seen too, where basically depending on what their key goal is. So I've had everything from procurement teams implementing a new procurement system. So if they're not able to do that by the deadlines, if a senior leadership team isn't able to do a merger successfully within their organizations, we see that. So team dynamics is one part of it, but I really think you need to look at the business side as well to see what are the goals and the purpose of this team. Is it well understood? Are they achieving it? Are they meeting their timeframes? And how are they working together? And as you know, Zorn, in many organizations, particularly here in North America, people are focused on the outcomes and they jump to that right away without spending enough time on process. And I'm still amazed to this day that sometimes the issues I work with the most senior leadership teams are some of the ones that I would see even at a junior level, because they haven't spent the time to figure out how are we going to make decisions as a team. And so I still see a lot of teams try to come to consensus. Maybe it's because I'm in Canada and everyone's polite, and consensus is not a good way for complex decisions, right?
I love consensus. That's a good consensus is good. I love that. It gives voices to everybody.
Yeah, it's important to have everyone's voices heard, but on complex decisions, you're not going to get to consensus. So what's their format? What's their process for dealing with that? How are they managing conflict? And so with a lot of European clients, for example, conflict is a part of their culture. And it's really, if you didn't express your ideas and if they weren't controversial or challenging, people would wonder what's going on. And then at the same time, you have to wonder, sometimes people don't have the skill of managing conflict productively. And so relationships get damaged. And once we start to see trust go down, we can see also assessments are a great way, ideally, of pinpointing where an existing team might have challenges. And so we can even give a leader an opportunity just to sit back, reflect about their team, complete the assessment, and see the areas of strength and opportunities for development. And if you're not using an assessment, even if you're coaching a leader one-on-one, they'll often bring up, okay, I'm having some challenges with my team, and maybe it's a newly formed team and they haven't created team purpose and team norms. Maybe it's an existing team and maybe they're a new person in. So there's been this membership change in the team. And so we call those opportunities team resets. And that's a great opportunity to come in, support the team with team coaching.
Exactly. And the team reset was happening a lot throughout COVID, and us moving from face-to-face to hybrid to virtual to hybrid. And, those team resets were super important. And I know a few of my clients were always saying to me, our team spirit is diminishing. We're not as good as we were before. Something changed, we're not as productive. we're not, having fun, even the fun element, we're not having fun as a team. We just work, outcome, outcome, outcome. So that new term that you're introducing, which I really love, the team reset, how can you bring the existing team to the reset point so they can then create that invisible magic and that specific something that this team has that makes them so unique, right?
Yeah, and we've all been there, right? We've all been part of a high-performing team. And when you're part of that, there's this energy that comes from within, a positivity that comes from within the culture. And so it's not just about the goals the team has to achieve, but what's the culture within. And I love that you mentioned fun. Oh my gosh, why shouldn't we have fun? We spend a lot of time at work, right? And
Exactly.
fun is a big part of it. Like if everyone recalls their best team, which is an exercise we all tend to use, fun comes out. We were all working on the same cause. We were supporting one another. We were really engaged and aligned around the goal, and we had milestones that we were achieving, and we celebrated that. I mean, that's what we want to create for every team, as that spirit that you get out of bed in the morning, you've got a purpose, and you're looking forward to working with the people that you're on the team with, and you're achieving and making an impact at work, right?
And as you said, for that to happen, sometimes the process, the agreements, how everything is set up, it's even more important than the outcome. And I see this from my work, the people are focusing on the outcome. They forget the process, they forget the agreements, they forget how do we make decisions, how do we resolve conflicts, how, everything that you said so far becomes something that we're just going to do maybe ever, maybe never. And what you're saying, that foundational piece, if we invest enough time and energy to create that strong foundation of the healthy team constellation, then we can really achieve even the outcomes that we cannot vision, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the more senior the team, the more challenging it becomes for them to recognize that, because they've got, pressures from the board, they've got pressures from shareholders potentially, from their external community. And you would assume that when people rise to the top, that they've developed these processes along the way, and that they know that when they form as a new team or a team member changes, that they would dedicate this time to process. And they still tend to jump right to, okay, what are the goals? And it's interesting. You and I haven't even worked together yet. We're already aligning around some of the same common challenges we see across teams.
Exactly, because we share values. I think there's fun and also processes, but also sharing the values. I also feel that when the team understands what you said, the team purpose, and then we can align and synergize on the core values, then this invisible connection between us even becomes stronger. We don't need to agree on everything because diversity is really important, but we are aligned on the values. So my next question to you, because that's again a big topic, and I'm sorry to ask you all this challenging question, but
I love it.
You're so wise when it comes to people are learning so much from you. So this diversity and inclusion, D&I, it's a big topic nowadays, and it's a big topic all over the world. And people are saying that it's super important that teams are diversified, that we have different people from different walks of life with different mentalities. And unfortunately, I have to be very honest with you, some teams that I'm coaching, I can see that the team leader actually cloned people who are thinking the same, behaving the same, acting the same, sharing everything the same, and then the leader feels the team is good and they feel that they have a powerful team. So how can we get our teams to be more diversified? And what do you feel is the power of that? And what is the purpose of that? And how this impacts the overall connection and then also performance within the team?
Yeah, great question. Actually, Richard Hackman and Ruth Wegeman did a lot of research out of Harvard, as you're probably aware.
Yeah.
And one of their, conditions for higher performing teams is that you have the right people on the team. And unfortunately, we often don't get called in where we can help them change the membership of the team. So we have to coach with what exists. And you're right. I still see a lot of leaders who have hired people very similar to them because they think, oh, I'll be able to work with them. Or they haven't realized that having a challenging or diverse perspective is actually a good thing. And that will lead to more creativity and innovation. So they tend to recruit talent that's very similar to them, which is a challenge that you and I, have to raise in front of the team. So, and I think it's important because, and it isn't just about, this new need for diversity, equity, inclusion. This is something I've always been focused on. And I hope that people really do make sustainable changes in behavior around this, because this was a theme 30 years ago when I started working in banking. And it really died down, which is unfortunate. And we're also seeing in a lot of organizations the role of DEI. People have been hired, but it was more of a tick list for things to do, and the organization wasn't really behind it.
Yeah.
So if a leader isn't really behind it and supporting it, it's going to be more challenging in the team. So educating the team about diversity, and is that diversity of thought? Is it diversity of cultural backgrounds? Is it, ethnic diversity? All of these areas that create more opportunities for diverse thought, thinking, challenging perspectives are important. So that's another reason with the Team Coaching International, their assessment actually has an indicator around values diversity. And so you get that insight of the team right off the bat. Do they at least value the diversity of thought within their team? And so that's a great place to start with, because if it's very low, you can actually start to coach a team. Well, what could we do to increase that diversity of thought? Maybe we can't change the members of the team, but if we recognize, for example, that we don't have someone who, is really that person who kind of challenges everyone, well, then can we create a persona? And could we even bring a chair to the table or to the conversation and label this, and then have people put that, persona on at different points in a team coaching process to try it out, to practice that? Can we invite our stakeholders in to give us feedback around how we're operating as a team and where diversity would be more beneficial? Are we even making sure that within our current team, we're using facilitation techniques to ensure inclusivity and that all voices are heard? So a lot of leaders, for example, they'll do brainstorming, which can be a great process. However, typically the extroverts speak first, and then other people come. So then it ends up being groupthink. So rather than doing that, encourage everyone to write down their ideas. Give them a minute or two for reflection. Imagine that, doing that before we jump into talking. Reflect, capture your ideas. And whether it's in Mural, if it's a virtual session, or whether it's using sticky notes or a flip chart, have all the ideas put down there. Now start to look at those ideas, and you've got a whole lot more inclusivity than if you just have traditional brainstorming methods. And so, that's important too, to recognize how our processes contribute to it, how our structure on the team contributes to it, and even our own external structure. So is the team being rewarded and recognized for presenting challenging ideas and thoughts to other teams that they're working with?
Exactly. Beautiful. So much to learn in this field. I think this field is something that is becoming even more and more significant and important. As I said at the opening of the podcast, that this field, in my opinion, will grow and will develop. From your perspective, as we're coming closer to the wrap up, what are some of the trends that you're seeing, and what is the future of team coaching for you? How would you like this to see? You and I mentioned, one of our vision that we're plugging into collective consciousness is that each and every team will have a team coach similar to the sports team that will be able to manage their performance, when they're underperforming and overperforming. That's something that we would love to see. What else do you, Michelle, feel it's the future of team coaching in this current world for you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think we're starting to see organizations that are willing to explore scaling up team coaching across the division or the organization itself. We're seeing a lot more work being done with team of teams. And I think that's important too, because now we're talking about how does one team influence another team? How can we teach processes to one team, get them to do it with another team? How can we bring teams together so that they collectively learn and build on the collective intelligence? Because a lot of organizations still have really hard lines and silos between teams. So I think team of teams is important. There's no question AI is placing an increasing role. I know David Clutterbuck and another gentleman, Sam from the UK, have been talking about the role of AI in team coaching. I think it will be there. I think it is there in terms of some elementary apps, such as, having your team establish their team norms or goals, and then they give each other feedback each week as to how they do that. I think that rudimentary process is there. It's gotten to the point where they're giving team members personas, but the graphics and everything behind it aren't like our video games. So until we get to that point, I don't know if people will feel that this is really real, like it's a cartoon versus I'm actually really, having this conversation with you. I think, more people need to master the skill of virtual facilitation, virtual team coaching, even leaders themselves. A lot of leaders just use Zoom, and yet there's so many apps that we can integrate, such as Mural, Miro, other types of apps that can really make a much better use of the team's time together, and it's more engaging. I think we'll see, well, what I hope I see is what happens in North America has happened in UK and Europe. I would honestly say you guys are about 5 years ahead of us in terms of team coaching. And I think it's much more well understood. There's even RFPs around it. There's a lot of team coaches. There's even team coaching networks, such as the one you have. I'm hoping that more people understand and appreciate the value of team coaching to strategic objectives, and that we can provide that support. And so I think, that's one of the reasons I partner with organizations in Europe, for example, is because I think they have a greater understanding of what it is. So those are some of the trends I see. I do see, I'm like you, I believe team coaching will actually eventually overtake individual coaching. And because there's a greater return on investment. And if you really want to make changes, look at how teams are formed. Everyone's part of at least 1 to 3 teams. And if we focus on that collective intelligence, I think organizations are going to move further ahead, be more agile, and achieve their goals versus working just on individual coaching.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. I love what you shared so far. So much wisdom and abundance of knowledge that Michelle is sharing with us. Thank you once again for being part of this podcast. Of course, we're going to reference Michelle's LinkedIn profile alongside with her website, so you can reach out to her and talk to her about her services. I think that a lot of the people, as Michelle beautifully said, need team coaching nowadays. And I'm happy that we also covered some of the topics that will signify to the team leaders, to the CEOs, to anybody who is part of the team when the team coaching is needed. And I would love to believe that this is also, like what Michelle said, it will become a norm that every team in the future will have a team coach, or somebody who knows how to facilitate, somebody who learns core coaching skills and can serve that role within the team, just to get them to get through these processes, to give them the time to think, to give them the time to create those foundations that are necessary for team to be fully functional, healthy, like a healthy family constellation, when people can have fun, they can grow, they can develop, they can perform, they can achieve, and have this sense of, wow, I'm so happy that I'm here and this is the right home for me. This team is my family, so to say. So as we're wrapping up, Michelle, anything that you would love to share, to leave the audience with, anything that you feel it's important for them to think about, to contemplate, to observe, to any call for action from your point of view?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very easy process and a tool to incorporate, but we often don't. So for any leader of a team, I would suggest that process of reflection. I think too often we're caught up in the busyness of work and we don't step back often enough to reflect. What is going well? What could we do differently? What do we need to make sure we continue to do? And so I would encourage leaders of teams to do that and to try to assess both strengths of their teams and notice those opportunities for development and think about how they can leverage those strengths. And of course, reaching out for a team coach. And for those who are team coaches, I would really encourage them to become familiar with team coaching competencies, whether it be through EMCC or ICF, so that if they're making that shift from individual coaching to team coaching, they understand the complexities involved in team coaching and how they can really service the team as a client, as a system. And I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I've loved this conversation, and the questions aren't too challenging. They're real, and that's what teams are facing, these real challenges. And these are what leaders are facing. So thank you so much for hosting me on this podcast. I've loved this conversation. Can't wait to replay it myself and make sure I've got all my learning down pat too.
Exactly, so you can learn from yourself. And thank you so much for being real. I love what you said, Michelle, that the real questions, their conversation, real issues the team are facing. And thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. And once again, everybody, thank you so much for coming to TNM Coaching Unplugged. It was joy and pleasure to be your host today, to host Michelle, who is absolutely wonderful. As you know, I've learned so much. I run my team and I was thinking, oh my God, I've this and this and this and this. I already bookmarked a few things that I'm going to do within my team as well to become even better as a team leader. And I hope you're going to do the same. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, Michelle, have a wonderful day and bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.